if this was in the 1600s, both of these guys would be Japanese warriors, Ronins, just navigating themselves through the woods, fighting to the death.
What's up, everybody? Laura Sanko here, as always, joined by Dean Thomas. Dean, where are you? Because it kind of looks like, I don't know what it looks like, but there's like a hot water heater behind. I don't know what that is. Is that a water heater, a furnace? There's definitely a washer behind you. What on earth is going on?
I got a hot water heater behind me. I'm in the hood. I'm in the ghetto. I stay in the ghetto, so I gotta keep it ghetto.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying? I got my Michael Chiesa shirt on. I gotta
Yes.
keep it real. I'm just trying to keep it real. So
You
I'm
got the
keeping it
arms
real.
out, sun's out,
Arms out.
sun's out.
That's right. Yeah, I got the arms. Can't nobody harm me, so I'm doing my thing.
Love it. I love it. Keep that energy. Keep it right
Yeah.
there. We are here to talk about UFC 295's new main event for the light heavyweight vacant championship, interim vacant, or no, this is for the actual one. I keep getting confused because we got another, everything's been switched around, but this one is for the vacant light heavyweight championship. And before we get into this fight, I gotta go over this because the amount of just messiness, the amount of cluster effery that this title has had is unbelievable.
The whole division.
The whole division. I was trying to refresh my memory, and I remember the most recent things, but then you keep going back. You're like, man, it has been a hot mess at 205 for a while now. So we'll even take out the whole couple of years that it was like John was winning and then he was getting stripped, and then John would win and then he would get overturned, and it was DC's, and then DC was like, no, I'm gonna go to heavyweight. John comes back. John fights Anthony, Santos, and Reyes, right? And then John's like, no, y'all not paying me enough. I'm probably gonna go to heavyweight. Peace out. Then we get Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes, and Jan wins. Then we get Jan Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira, and Glover wins. And then we get Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka, and Yuri wins. And then Yuri gets injured. And so Yuri's off on the shelf. And then in some weird way, we get Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev, and it's a draw. So we get absolutely no resolution in that fight. And then for some reason, we go to Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira, and then Jamal wins, and then Jamal gets injured. It is a hot, hot mess.
And I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because MMA has this ability to do the impossible. So when you think about all the scenarios that could happen in MMA, the most likely one to happen never happens. It's always the one that you least expect. In fact, it's always the option that you didn't even think of. So let's take it back to last week in Brazil, just 2 days ago in Brazil. The last likely scenario would be Derek Lewis going 5 rounds with Jailton Almeida.
Right?
Like I said, so I went on TV. And I said, Derek Lewis is going to win this fight. I picked him only because like I just said, you know what? MMA is weird and weird things happen. And I said, that's probably the most weird thing that can happen is Derek Lewis wins this fight. And guess what happened? He didn't win. He goes 5 rounds with Jailton Almeida. I didn't even consider that an option.
No one did. Why would you? And the fact that he went 5 rounds on his back is even weirder. I mean, not the fact that he was on his back, but the fact that Jailton was not able to finish him. That was one of the strangest fights. It was bizarre.
So when you take that into consideration, it makes perfect sense why the light heavyweight division has been in this whirlwind of chaos, because nothing makes sense in MMA. It just doesn't make sense.
It does not. But it feels like we could kind of get back on a track, right? Because now we've got Yuri Prochazka, who at one time was the undisputed champion. So that feels good. But now we're taking a former middleweight fighter, and he's coming back up to light heavyweight for the second time. And of course, I'm talking about Alex Pereira. So I guess I want to start, you know what? Let me start off with the stats, because I always forget to run through those if I don't hit them off the top. So Let's run through these. We've got Yuri Prochazka, 3-0 in the UFC. I always forget how few fights he actually has in the UFC because he's been around for 3 years. And then you've got Alex Pereira, 5-1 in the UFC. Also not the longest, UFC tenure, but both these guys, a good amount of experience overall, especially Yuri Prochazka. The ones that really stand out, both of them very accurate strikers. Yuri Prochazka, 55.6%. Alex Pereira, 62% accuracy. Both of them very high volume, 5.77 significant strikes per minute for Yuri, and then 5.11 for Pereira. So really, really close there. Both of them have 100% takedown accuracy because I think they both hit 2 or maybe 1 or 2 takedowns. And then both of them have good takedown defense. The stats are a little interesting because they've had so few fights and because of the stylistic matchups. These are the ones I find very interesting, though. When you go down and you look at the target breakdown of these two guys, because we can agree that they are both primarily strikers, especially Alex. But even Yuri, I mean, he is predominantly a striker. In terms of targets, Yuri Prochazka is 85.2% of his strikes go to the head. That is tremendous. That is a huge percentage. 13.5% to the body and just 1.3% to the leg. The man does not ever kick. And then you've got Alex Pereira, where it's much more evenly spread out. Only 41% to the head, 35% to the body, and little over 24% to the leg. And then when you go to position breakdown in terms of where the strikes are landed based on position, Pereira, 85% at distance, 14% in the clinch, almost nothing on the ground because he almost never goes to the ground. And then you've got Yuri, 77% at distance, 3.9% in the clinch, which I thought was interesting. He seems like a guy that would have a really strong clinch game, but obviously statistically not.
Well,
and then
so much, right?
What's that?
He's always moving,
yes.
So that's got to be factored in there somewhere.
100%. But the one that really jumped off was the fact that he kicks so infrequently. And I don't know that will be a factor in this fight, but I just thought it was fascinating to have a guy who is so dynamic as a striker and uses so many different tools. But he really doesn't use the kicks all that often. It's a lot of punches and elbows. I guess I'll start with Yuri and your thoughts on him and what does make him special, and then kind of move into what this injury / layoff may or may not mean for him.
Well, so it's hard to really talk about Yuri and what makes him special and not also say the same thing for Alex, because what makes both of them special is their throwback warrior, old martial code mentality. If this was in the 1600s, both of these guys would be Japanese warriors, Ronins, just navigating themselves through the woods, fighting to the death. And you could just see that in both guys. So that to me is special because these guys will probably fight for free if they could, just because they want to see who's the best. And I love that about them. And that's what makes them so good as fighters. So when you look at a guy like Yuri, he's so in touch with his warrior spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But what separates him from Alex is the fact that he's so free. He's so elusive, and he doesn't really have a style. So in that sense, he kind of has the Bruce Lee mentality of be like water, where he's just forms to anything, whatever it takes to win a fight, be able to adapt, have no real game plan, which is the game plan in itself. So that makes him different than other guys because he probably does a lot of his training on his own, where he's trying to figure things out on his own and try to figure out new ways to do things. So that is special, and I have to give him his props for that. So going into a fight with him, in that sense, you always have to be careful because you don't know where it's coming from. Now, the fact that he doesn't throw a lot of kicks, he might be aware of that, and that might be a weapon for him in this fight because he knows he doesn't normally throw a lot of kicks. So I don't want to even say, okay, he hasn't thrown a lot of kicks in the past, so he's going to come into this fight thinking that. I'm actually thinking he might be kick heavy a little bit in this fight. To try to get Alex out of position in some way. He might fight a little bit different. And especially after having shoulder surgery, where his arms might not be, he may be a little hesitant. And in the time that he couldn't throw punches, he might have been working on kicks. So we have to anticipate him having a more kick-heavy game in this fight.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up there, is that, he does strike me as the type of guy who, even though he can't be throwing his punches the way he normally would, he's going to be in the gym and he's going to be doing the mental reps. But if you do go to the gym and you've got, four limbs, and, at least one of them and vis-a-vis two of them are kind of, sidelines, that's a really good point that he might have been working the kicking game really heavily. Do you think that his style being so free and so extemporaneous benefits him in terms of the idea of ring rust?
Uh, for sure, absolutely, absolutely. So in terms of a benefit, he's the type of guy who probably goes through the process of fighting in his head every day.
Yeah.
So the fact that he can get out there and do it is probably helpful. But where it doesn't help him is his defense.
Mm.
It doesn't help him to be so carefree because it leaves him open a lot defensively. And against another fighter, it might not be that big of a problem. But when you talk about, there's two guys in the division that it's going to be a big problem for: Alex Pereira and the current champ, who will be giving up his belt, Jamal Hill. Guys that are extremely accurate, extremely have this extreme knack for putting these two knuckles on your chin.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a serious problem for Yuri if he's so free that he almost forgets about his defense sometimes.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest, critique you can make of a guy who has, I mean, his resume in terms of knockouts is ridiculous. But when you do watch him fight, I think that's probably the biggest thing as an analyst that you might pick up on, is that he is that freedom, that creativity does create openings at times, right? For him to get touched up a little bit. And when you start imagining how a fight with a tactician like Alex Pereira might go, I think that's probably the biggest thing that jumps off the page, is that his defense, it might really, or lack thereof, might really get him into trouble in this one. But I guess would love your thoughts on guys like that, right? Like, he's not completely dissimilar to a Yair Rodriguez, right? And there there's a reason why guys like that get to that point. They get to the highest level without having what I would call overly fundamental defensive structures. So what is it, I guess, about that particular style of offense that allows maybe for a less, they're not gonna come at you like this. It wouldn't work with their offense.
Well, because their offense is a part of their defense. And I don't necessarily like that, because people always say, well, the saying goes like this, and the saying, a good offense makes a good defense, right? I guess that's what the saying is. I mean, I don't necessarily believe that, but sometimes it works that way. If you never allow a person to get comfortable to
Mhm.
throw back at you because you're throwing at them in so many different angles that they can't get comfortable to throw back at you, then that's a defense in itself. Your offense is your defense when you're attacking from all these different angles. But when you're dealing with a guy like Alex Pereira, who's going to be hard to fake out, who's not going to fall for all the tricks, and his defense ain't the best either. I mean, but it's better than Yuri's.
Mhm.
But in terms of him, he's not going to be biting on all the feints and all the movement, and he's going to stick you. So part of his countering is to jam you up. So you might be trying to come in and fake him out. He's just going to jam you up and punch you in the jaw. So he's not going to be falling for all that stuff. But these guys have made it so far with all the trickery and all the wizardry by just faking guys out and not allowing them to be comfortable to counter them.
Yeah.
But I think a guy like Alex Pereira will be comfortable. It's going to be hard to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I'm a huge fan of Yuri, and as a fan, that style is so much fun to watch, right? It's a delight to sit there and watch someone be so creative, and it makes for a high action fight. But if you want to take a critical look at it, I went back and I watched the Teixeira fight today, and what sticks out to me is that, Glover Teixeira does not have the most sophisticated striking game, and yet he was really able to find moments in that fight to really land on Yuri. Now, Yuri, on the flip side of that, like, what a chin on that guy. Tremendous ability to take some big shots. But it is concerning when you see someone with a little bit more of a bread and butter style striking game like Glover Teixeira does have, And then you think Alex Pereira's, a couple degrees much more sophisticated than that, might really spell some trouble. But we obviously won't know until the fight really starts to get rolling. Well, in terms of Alex, obviously we've talked about him on this channel quite a bit because we've covered his fights with Izzy. What did you make of his fight with Jan? Like, what were your biggest takeaways in that fight with Jan?
Well, is that he's better at 205.
Mm-hmm.
He's and people go, oh well, he don't have the size advantage and blah 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 blah. I don't believe in that. I think that that's something that we always overblow because it's a visual and we can see it. So whenever somebody's a little bit smaller and they don't do well against somebody bigger, that's always the excuse, or that's always the reason.
It's easy to point out.
It's because we can see it. But the reality is this: at 205, he doesn't have to cut an extra 20 pounds.
Yeah.
20 pounds. 20 pounds. And we see it in his game. At 20 pounds less, he just doesn't move as well. He doesn't look as healthy. He looks like he's starving and he's just happy to put weight back on. But at 205, he looks legit. He looks like a legit fighter that likes to fight, that wants to be out there. I mean, he did 25 minutes with Jan Blachowicz in altitude.
And he looks so fresh.
And he looked fresh, right? And Jan looked hurt. So I think at 205 he's going to be better. I think his chin's going to be better because at 85 I don't think his chin was great. Like he got hit twice. He got hit twice by Adesanya.
Yeah.
The first one almost knocked him out, and the second one knocked him out cold. At 205 he was able to take Jan's punches. I think at 205 he's just a better fighter. He doesn't fight with a lot of speed anyway, so it's not like he's going to be lacking in speed. I think he's just going to be more durable, more solid. He's going to be a more solid structure to be able to take impact a lot better. So I like him as a 205 fighter. I don't care what all these other guys say. Well, he's not going to have the size advantage now. He's still going to put your lights out.
Yeah, and I actually, like you, I was pretty impressed with. I mean, he seemed every bit as big as Jan to me. And to be able to grapple for a full fight with a guy of Jan Blachowicz' level. I mean, we saw how Jan was able to physically dominate Izzy. And take what you will from that fight. I mean, obviously, Alex wasn't able to get any offense going on the ground, but the fact that he was able to defend so successfully and then have the gas to then get up and land the much harder punches and kind of, I will say, eke out. It was a close fight, but get that split decision says a lot about his abilities at 205. That's a former champion.
Yeah, that's a former champion. That's a guy who, and let's be honest, like I thought he was going to win. I thought Jan was going in to win. I thought Jan was making his comeback. Like Jan had looked good and he had never lost a rematch before.
Yeah.
And he considered that a rematch to Glover. Like for him, in his head, he was considering that as a rematch to Glover. And he has never lost in that situation before. And I felt like he was on a run. But I think it might have stopped. I think Alex might have stopped him. Alex might be the roadblock in his way. So I really like where Alex is right now. I find that fighters have like this window of where they peak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now Alex is at the peak. He is at the pinnacle of his window.
Yeah. And
it might be after this fight where it has to start going down. But I think in this fight, he is at the peak of where his career is going to be.
How in your experience, I'm sure you've had firsthand experience with this, whether yourself or with your athletes, how much does it really matter when you have someone in your camp who has also fought your opponent? Like the fact that, Yuri fought Glover, does that, and now of course, Glover is Alex's coach. Does that really matter that much? Do you really learn a lot, or is that overblown? Or am I not understanding like some of no, you can really get some inside tricks or I'd love your perspective on that.
No, you can, because I've done that before. I fought guys that have fought, my teammates or friends, and there's a lot you can gather from that because you can look at that. For Alex and Glover is a little different because they have two different styles. So my whole career, like when a fighter would fight Eve Edwards, I'd always watch that fight. Yeah. He was a friend of mine, and I'd always watch that fight and see what I can do different to capitalize of where he didn't capitalize. So like those are ways you can take advantage of that. But in terms of Glover and Alex, because they have different skill sets and different strengths, it may not be as apparent.
Yeah.
But Glover can still provide some insight in terms of, okay, this is where he felt strong. This was a good position of his. You got to be careful with this. he can certainly see that because they spent some time together. I mean, they were in there for 4.5 rounds.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time together, so he'll be able to provide some insight in terms of what he felt like, where he felt strong, where he felt some holes, where he felt like he didn't have a lot of balance. So, and I'm sure Glover can remember those moments too, especially if he goes back and watches the film.
Yeah. Common sense would maybe say that, and not even common sense. I've heard people this week already talk about, oh, well, you know, it makes sense that Yuri is going to want to take Alex down. I don't disagree with that entirely, but I don't recall ever seeing Yuri offensively grapple. Like, he's good defensively. I can only think of one time off the top of my head where he was the one initiating the takedown. And I want to say it was after he got, clipped up a little bit. So do you think we're going to see Yuri offensively wrestle? Because anybody else, that is the obvious path to victory against Alex, but I don't know.
I don't think that's his plan A. Well, first off, I'm not sure he even has a plan. I
Yeah,
think like if the takedown presents itself, like if he's standing in a spot where he just looks like, man, just take
obvious.
him down,
Yeah,
he's going to take him down. But I don't see that being part of his plan, part of his plan A. I think he's going to just be chopping away and seeing what's working and what's not working and just being very open minded to his options. I don't think he's going in to be like, all right, plan A is to go in there and take him down. I don't think that at all. I think his first options are always the same. Go out there, start moving, start putting my hands on him, make this as fast and exciting, and try to hurt him as fast as I can. And taking somebody down with his skill set, I don't think he sees that as an opportunity to hurt somebody as much as he thinks it's an opportunity to hurt somebody on his feet.
sure.
So I don't see him taking him down and go, all right, I'm going to take him down and beat him up. I think he's going to try to do it on the feet. But if it presents itself, like let's say Alex grabs him and he feels weak to him, he's probably going to try to take him down from there.
Mhm.
But I don't see him going out there shooting double legs.
I tend to agree with you. One thing that really jumped out to me when I was kind of reviewing the tape on both these guys, and to me it seems pretty obvious, and I think it will really will be a factor in the fight. No one has really ever attacked the calf kick on Yuri Prochazka, and I understand that he moves a lot. It's probably easier said than done, but he's also very, very lead leg heavy. He kind of plays that game where he leans forward to manipulate distance so that he can lean back out of range. But you have to be good at checking kicks, or at least avoiding kicks when you do that, the way that Izzy is able to avoid most calf kicks, because he does the same thing where he leans and presents his head as if it's closer than what it really is, so that he can, pull back out of distance. But when you pull back, your leg's still in the same spot. And I went back and I watched his last fight in Ryzen, and he beat the brakes off CB Dalloway. It was a first round stoppage. But before the first round stoppage, CB Dalloway was starting to land some heavy, heavy calf kicks in that fight. And it just made me think, man, this might be, I mean, it's obviously already one of LX's biggest, best tools. We all talk about how great and how sneaky the way that he throws his calf kick. I think that might be a really big factor in this fight. I don't know about you.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, is I don't think that Yuri's even concerned with that. I don't think he really concerns himself with the opponent as much as a fighter like I would. Like as a
Mm-hmm.
coach, I'm looking at every opponent like, hey, this guy does this good, he does
Yeah.
that good, he does that good. But when you fight like Yuri, when you're so offensive minded and so free and open minded, I don't think he even thinks about, okay, he's good at calf kicks. I think he's going out there and just being like, I don't care what he's good at, but he's not going to be good at much when I'm punching him in the face.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of people do think like that, but he's been able to get away with it because he has an insane belief in himself. And he really goes out there and just explores. He's just like, all right, game time, let's go. A lot of guys say they do that, and then when they get out there, they freeze. Yuri's not the type of guy that freezes. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that he can't be affected by the leg kick, but I can see him starting to make adjustments if it does start to happen because he's not stupid neither. So
Sure.
I think that it may be a factor in a little bit for a little while, but he's going to make adjustments. He will make adjustments to that. He'll move more for
So,
sure.
so what, I guess in closing on this one, what do you think this fight's going to look like? Walk us through your most likely scenario of what type of fight we're going to see and who gets their hand raised.
Well, I think this really comes down to and I hate to say this, but like who gets hit first, right? So,
Uh-huh.
um, but I do think that Alex wins this fight. I think that Alex, because he's such a sharpshooter and he's so calculated, and he doesn't waste any energy. He's not going to throw a punch that he doesn't think is going to hit you directly in the chin. And I think with the freedom that Yuri has, he's going to leave himself open. And Alex is going to, and Alex in 25 minutes, Alex will find that chin at least one time.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, but he has to do that before Yuri finds his. That's the tricky part, right? And that's where the intangibles come in. But I still think that regardless of that theory, I still think Alex finds his first. I think Alex finds that first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if Alex can stay defensive in the moments of chaos that Yuri is so good at creating even early on in fights. I mean, a lot of his finishes have come in those moments of, franticness, right? He's so good at finding the spots there. So I think your point was dead on earlier when you were talking about how Alex is not going to be the type of guy who's going to bite on every little weird movement and be overly fooled by the strange angles that Yuri throws his punches from. He's too much of a tactician and too experienced to be fooled by a lot of that stuff. So I'm with you.
It's weird because like when you see his stance, like he kind of holds his hands about right here, like right under his shoulders.
Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, here, and he just kind of raises them up a little
Yeah.
bit. He won't overreact to a shot. He'll just raise it up,
Mhm.
raise it up, raise it up, raise it up, and then bang, hit you right in the chin.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that in 25 minutes he will find that shot.
Yeah. I'm with you. Well, it's going to be a great fight regardless. I don't see it going the distance, no matter who ends up being the last man standing. I don't think we're going to need the judges on this one. And that to me, as a fan, is what I always look forward to. So I think that this is going to be a tremendous main event. I think, despite all the changes to the card, we've got a great, great card. And we're going to talk about the co-main event that is now the new heavyweight fight that was added to the card here as well. So, Dean, thank you for joining me from your garage dungeon.
On the hood, the ghetto.
Keeping it
I'm
real.
still in the ghetto. Listen, you could take me out the ghetto, and then you could drop me back off in the ghetto,
Yeah,
and I'll
but
be
you
fine.
can't. I'm not gonna take your camera out the ghetto.
No.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And guys, keep it locked in right here. We will talk about the co-main event as well. We'll see you then.